Somewhere in a government warehouse in New Jersey right now sits a fake handbag, stitched to look exactly like a genuine luxury brand. It sits in a pile with thousands of others just like it, waiting for someone to decide its fate. That single warehouse alone holds more than half of everything seized at every port of entry across 15 states. A sister facility in Los Angeles is holding on to goods worth more than $860 million at fair market value. All of it sits untouched behind a locked door. So once customs agents actually catch a shipment of fakes, what actually happens to all of it? And why does almost none of it ever quietly reappear somewhere on the resale market? Global counterfeit trade is estimated to move more than $1 trillion a year. That is more than the entire economic output of a country like Switzerland. A meaningful share of that trade still gets caught trying to cross a border. Most of that catching starts with targeting rather than luck. Officers use risk-based screening, X-ray imaging, and tips directly from trademark holders. Every port of entry runs this screening constantly, sorting ordinary cargo from shipments worth a closer look. Those trademark holders often have their own investigators watching for suspicious shipping patterns long before a single physical inspection ever happens. Once a shipment is flagged, a formal detention notice goes out to the importer within about 10 business days. That notice explains exactly which items are suspected and why. Sometimes it is a copied logo, sometimes a mismatched serial number, sometimes packaging that does not match the real manufacturer's specifications at all. From that point, the importer has a genuine, if narrow, opportunity to respond. They can request samples of the actual goods to have independently tested, or they can file a petition arguing the merchandise is not truly counterfeit at all. That petition sometimes succeeds, especially when the goods turn out to be legitimate gray market products rather than fakes. But once a shipment is confirmed as bearing a registered trademark without permission, the odds shift dramatically. The trademark holder gets formally notified, receiving details on the quantity and the port of entry. Sometimes they even receive the manufacturer's information. That is exactly why brands like Louis Vuitton or Nike keep their own law firms monitoring these notices around the clock. Someone is always watching for their name to show up on any list. For truly counterfeit goods, petitions asking for the merchandise back rarely succeed. Even importers who simply stay quiet are not necessarily finished with the matter. A separate monetary penalty can still arrive by mail months or even years after the goods themselves are gone for good. Here's the part nobody tells you about what the law actually allows once goods reach this point. Federal regulations technically permit seized counterfeit goods to be destroyed or sold at public auction, or transferred to another government agency, or even donated to charity. But that donation option comes with one enormous condition attached. The original trademark owner has to personally consent in writing. That consent has to confirm the goods are not a hazard. Only then can any donation legally happen at all. That single requirement decides almost everything about what happens next. Without a signature from the brand itself, the law defaults straight to destruction, no matter how usable the product still is. In 2005, agents sitting on entire warehouses of counterfeit clothing and footwear used exactly this consent process during an emergency. More than 100,000 pieces of seized clothing, toys, and household items were released directly to shelters housing Hurricane Katrina survivors. Displaced families in places like the Houston Astrodome received real clothing, real shoes, and real blankets. Every item was technically counterfeit, and every single one was desperately needed in that moment, not requested by any single brand, not repeated at anywhere near that scale since, not the outcome the underlying law was actually built to encourage in the first place. The official language still lists donation as a valid legal option sitting right there in the federal code today. The fuller reality is that almost no trademark owner ever signs off on that option. Brand protection lawyers see far more risk in letting a counterfeit product circulate. That holds true no matter how desperate the need is. Destroying it and starting fresh feels safer every time. A single counterfeit handbag still wearing a real logo is a risk no brand wants to take. Spotted on a real person years later, it becomes exactly the kind of headline a luxury brand spends millions trying to avoid. So the safer legal answer, almost every single time, is to withhold consent and let the shredder handle it instead. So nearly every seizure today ends the exact same way, regardless of what the statute technically permits. It gets run through an industrial shredder or fed into an incinerator until nothing recognizable remains. Not every item passing through that same warehouse system is counterfeit either. Vehicles, cash, and general contraband forfeited without any counterfeit branding get treated completely differently. Those items are typically advertised and sold at public auction instead, with proceeds held to satisfy competing legal claims first. Federal rules even let officers skip storage entirely for very cheap counterfeit shipments. Sometimes keeping a low-value shipment in a warehouse would cost more than the goods are worth. When that happens, agents can order immediate destruction on the spot. A seized vehicle worth tens of thousands of dollars is worth the wait for a scheduled sale instead. Larger seizures make the overall scale of this system obvious. In 2018, agents uncovered 22 shipping containers of fake designer handbags, shoes, and accessories in a single operation. Had they been genuine, those containers would have been worth more than $500 million. All of it was eventually destined for the exact same shredders and incinerators as a single fake wallet mailed from overseas. Not every seized item follows this path toward destruction either. The same federal office that handles counterfeit destruction has also spent years quietly repatriating truly valuable seized property. That includes swords over 1,000 years old, some tied to ancient nomadic warriors from the Eurasian steppe. They were smuggled through American mail facilities, disguised as ordinary cargo. One package was even labeled as a barbecue set. Officers eventually returned the artifacts intact to Ukraine, in ceremonies attended by that country's own ambassador, and in one case, its president. The system built to shred fake handbags is the same one trusted with something else entirely. It hands real historical artifacts back to the country they came from. Both jobs run out of the same small teams of officers working inside warehouses most people will never see. That contrast rarely gets mentioned in either direction, since a shredded handbag and a repatriated sword never end up in the same news story. So the honest answer to where seized counterfeits actually go is almost disappointingly simple. Nearly everything that gets fully forfeited ends up destroyed, not resold, not quietly repurposed, not smuggled back out through a side door. The law now makes destruction the default outcome. Since donation requires a signature almost no brand is ever willing to give. A shipment that would have been worth millions on a store shelf becomes worthless the moment it enters that pipeline. It becomes valuable only as a lesson in why the label was fake in the first place. A hurricane once forced this system into its rarest possible exception. That makes you wonder how quietly something like an old hard drive full of personal data actually disappears. It happens the moment nobody is watching it get thrown away. This kind of hidden system is the sort of thing you can keep seeing unpacked stage by stage. Subscribing keeps the next one coming.